Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. In today's video, I am sharing how to make slider pop-up cards. I definitely find interactive cards to be difficult to create. I like to have dies that help me do all the cutting and scoring, and I like them to be easy to put together. The Heffy Doodle Slimline Slider pop-up die is exactly that kind of die. So in this video, I'm going to share how to use the dies, how to put the cards together, and give you a couple of ideas for inspiration too. So let's jump right in, take a look at these dies, and see how easy they are to use. So this is the Heffy Doodle Slider Slimline pop-up die, and you can see there's actually two dies in the set that need to be clipped apart. There is the main piece, and then there is this three-sided rectangle that needs to be cut apart from it. So there are three areas where there are tabs. There are two tabs here that you need to cut them apart, and that is going to allow you to have these two different dies. This first die is the pop-up piece and the main piece of the card. So I'm going to put some purple tape on that, and I'm going to cut it out of pink cardstock. The first time that I do this, I'm just going to cut it out of three different colors of cardstock so you can really see how the pieces go together. You can see that the open end of that die, I'm hanging off the 4 1/4 by 8 1/2 inch piece of cardstock. I'm also going to cut a piece of cardstock that is 3 1/2 by 8 1/2. Those are the three pieces of paper that you need. There's a little tab at the bottom of that pop-up piece, and I'm going to put my slider adhered right behind it. And we'll see when we flip it over here that that's how the slider and the pop-up work together. There are score lines in the middle, at the end, and at the top. And so you just need to fold all of those so that you can adhere the slider at the bottom, and then the middle will fold and the top will fold so that it pops up. The last thing you're going to do is place some foam tape, really thin strips on both sides and the bottom of this card. And that's going to give it enough height off of the backing so that it slides really easily. And you'll see in a card later in the video where I should have used 2 layers of foam, but for most cards you only need 1 layer of a thin strip of foam on 3 sides here, and then I'm just going to press it down on the white cardstock that I cut to 3 1/2 by 8 1/2. So just 3 pieces of paper, 2 dies, and that is it. A little bit of foam tape and maybe some tape runner, and you've got yourself a slider pop-up in a slimline shape. So now we're going to create 2 cards using this as the guide or template. First thing I'm going to do is stamp out some stamps from Who Let the Dogs Out, which is just this really cute set from Heffy Doodle, and I'm using Gina Amalgam ink because I'm going to do some really basic Copic coloring. Okay, so this time I'm going to be using white cardstock on all the pieces. So I'm going to cut out that large piece with white, I'm going to cut out the slider piece with white, and then I'm going to cut a piece of 3 1/2 by 8 1/2. I'm using a My Favorite Things grassy stencil, and I'm ink blending with Mowed Lawn underneath the stencil to create a grassy hill with blades sticking up, blades of grass sticking up. So the reason that I did the template first is so you could see it with 3 different colors of cardstock. Now I have 3 white colors of cardstock, so I'm going to do some ink blending on the top layer, which is the pop-up portion. So now I'm actually using a My Favorite Things cloud stencil, and I'm ink blending under the cloud stencil to create some blue sky under a big white puffy cloud, and I'm using Distress Oxide tumbled glass to do this. It's okay to go a little over the grass because the blue and the green blend together beautifully, and so you don't even notice if you do that. And that gives you a nice blend between the grass and the sky without any white lines, which I don't like. So I'm going to add another little cloud up here. And so this is the pop-up piece that we have. And I just think this is a cute little scene. For the 3 1/2 by 8 1/2 piece, which will go under the pop-up and under the slider, I'm using some Trinity Stamps stencils to put some confetti down. So I'm using Twisted Citron and Blueprint Sketch in Distress Oxide ink and just blending over those stencils to create this background. You won't see a lot of it, but you'll see some of it, and it will be a fun surprise inside the slider pop-up. I'm also going to stamp the sentiment inside. It says Yappy Birthday, and I stamped a couple of paw prints as well. Okay, so I want to put my little tape runner bit down at that last little tab there, and I am going to put my slider right on top of that, lining it up to the bottom of that tab, then put some foam tape around 3 sides, the bottom and both sides of the card there. And then I'm just going to flip that over and lay it on top of the 3.5 by 8.5 piece of cardstock that we created with the sentiment. Whoops, upside down. This one is going side to side. It's a horizontal slider pop-up. I did want to share one little trick with Copics to create a wood grain effect. I just do some lines up and down with the first color of Copic markers, and then I'm just doing some really fine lines in just different little wiggly patterns coming from the top and going up from the bottom and filling in. And you can see it kind of gives it an aged wood look. So now I'm just going to color in really quickly the inner part of this doghouse using some shading. And I am working on that Heffy Doodle cardstock, which I love so much because it really blends the markers well. And there's not a lot of bleeding on the outside, even with the red, which I found incredibly awesome. So now I have all my pieces cut out. I'm going to pop up some elements. I'm going to glue down some elements. I'm using Ultra Bond to glue down on the Distress Oxide ink because it is a little chalky finish, so sometimes tape runner doesn't stick to it, but the foam squares really do. They're very extra sticky. So I'm just building a little birthday scene with all of these little doggies from the Who Let the Dogs Out. There's a little bone cake and a little bone present. And then I decided to stamp from the Trinity Stamps Paper Crafting Magic Stamp Set a little sentiment that says pull with an arrow to the left. So you'll pull on that and then the slider will pop up, revealing the confetti and the sentiment in the background. These are so easy to make, just 3 pieces of paper, 2 dies, and I just can't believe how fun they are for how easy they are. Okay, this time I am using some sea glass cardstock from the Stamp Market. I've cut out all 3 pieces, the 2 dies and my 3.5 by 8.5 background piece out of the same cardstock. I'm going to be using a 6x6 stencil, it's also from Heffy Doodle, to create the waves in the back. And I'm going to add a little bit of ink on top of this colorful cardstock just because the lines of the stencil will be the sea glass, and then the other parts of the stencil will be the darker colors of blue, which I think is really fun. As you go down in the ocean, the ink is getting darker. That's just an easy way to represent the depth of the ocean. I used the stencil on the background piece, the 3.5 by 8.5, and on the front piece. The slider, I think I'm just going to keep plain. I'm going to use some Faded Jeans Distress Oxide ink to stamp the sentiment. Now, if you've ever seen my Distress Oxide video, you know I love stamping with Distress Oxide. Yeah, you need to usually double stamp, sometimes triple stamp it, but it comes out really clean, and I'm actually really impressed with how beautifully Distress Oxide stamps. So now it's time to put it together. I did adhere the slider down to the back of that little tab on the front, and then I just added a little bit of Salvage Patina at the very top because it just looked like it needed another color. I'm going to put 3 pieces of thin foam tape, 2 on the sides and 1 on the bottom. This is the card where I could have used another layer, and I'll show you why in a second. So you just lay that down on your background, just straighten it up. The rectangle on the front is the same as the 3.5 by 8.5 in the back. So I just place that down, and then when you pull, the only problem here is sometimes that slider was getting stuck on the sentiment piece that I put on the inside. I did stamp another sentiment from the Oceans of Love stamp set. It says, "I've got something to say," and then on the inside it's the Sending Oceans of Love. And here are all the little ocean critters from Sending Oceans of Love. I really love these guys. I think they're so cute. Love the little shark and the narwhal. They're just all adorable. So I just colored them in some blues and greens and grays. Some of them got little cheeks and everything, so just some very simple. And then I used the same pull stamp, but with the arrow pointing up this time because this is a vertical slimline slider pop-up card. So you can see if I added just another little slim piece of foam tape around the three sides, I wouldn't have had a lot of problem, I think, having the slider get stuck on the sentiment. But it ended up really looking cute anyway. I hope you enjoyed seeing how easy the Heffy Doodle Slimline Slider pop-up dies are to put together and how much fun they can be to add an interactive element to your cards. If you want to see the video where I use the Heffy Doodle Shadow Box die, check out that video over here. As always, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. It's not really quite... The Heffy Doodle Slimline... Much fun. The Heffy Doodle... There's like thunder out there, so hopefully we can get through this without like the lights going out.